can't teach an old dog new tricks. Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. We teach car dealers all over the country how to sell more cars and make more money using social media platforms. Like I said, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Check us out at retailresilient.com or send us a message in the chat bar on the Auto Hub Show.
Recently, we were concerned about our recon time and decided to look into reconditioning workflow software. After doing our research, I can confidently say we finally found the software that was right for us. We love that it packs robust data, control precision, clear communications, and performance accountability, all onto my desktop or mobile, so I'm always in touch. Before this, we manually tracked our recon process. We just assumed we were doing okay. We were wrong. After someone in my 20 group told me he used this software to improve his recon time to sale to just 3 to 5 days, I just had to look into it. Their team of recon experts all have hands-on dealership experience. We all benefit from faster time to line, inventory turns, and competitive advantages. To learn more, visit rapidrecon.com.
Thanks very much. So a special thank you to our new sponsor, Rapid Recon, not to not thank Retail Resilient. So here we go. So let's go to screen 2. All right. So good morning, everybody. So I'm going to go to our slide deck right now. So let's move that over. Slide deck. There we go. Thanks for your patience as I launch this thing. Where is it? There we go.
Yes, a lot of this is due to the LinkedIn and Facebook Live, so it gets a little bit awkward while we're doing this.
All right. So special thank you, obviously, to our platinum sponsor from Retail Resilient and our new silver sponsor from Rapid Recon. So thanks very much, and good morning, everybody. So 3 books.
Or good evening.
Or good evening, depending on where you are. So 3 books: Ultimate Collector Cars, Junkyard, Behind Scenes at California's Secretive European Car Salvage Yard, and Supercar, book for boys and girls, I'm sure. Go ahead, Jeff, on our disclaimer.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And we always say this disclaimer because, you know, something, we live in an age where we where something could be said wrong and somebody makes you pay for it. But so the views and opinions expressed in the Auto Hub show are those of our guest speakers, and our guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Auto Hub show, Ian Nethercott or Jeff Solo. And if you'd like to know more, please read the rest. Except for you, Marco, you're driving.
And welcome to the Collector Car Show. So here we go. All right, so good morning, everybody. So go ahead, Jeff.
Again, thank you for joining us. Our mission statement here, our whole purpose of existing in the Auto Hub show is to help dealers and others just do better. We don't profess to be experts, although we think we know everything. And we like to share the expertise of our guests. And, you know, truly, that's what it's all about. And we gather a lot of people and hopefully make some great connections. And, you know, just because of us, nothing to do with her, but Gail was able to take a month off and enjoy her life. No, just kidding.
It's true. It's true.
Gail, I have to tell you, our friends over at Car Guys Coffee have their thing where they do this and they do that. Well, our thing is this. That's what we're going to do from now on.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
Exactly. So joining us today on our making money from collector and performance cars, which ties in with car dealers because let's not kid each other. You know, I mean, Stavros, we've got, which I'll introduce in a moment, is a big time collector car person and a car person. And of course, we were sitting in a Mercedes dealer in a little town in famous called Athens, Greece, not Georgia for the Americans here. And Stavros, just please introduce yourself and thank you so much for taking the time. And I know you just finished your glass of wine, which you told us.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Stavros, and I'm not going to repeat my second name. I'll let you guys do that for me. I'm 35 years in the car business. I am a gearhead. Fuel and oil is running in my veins. I've worked with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Rolls-Royce, and Jaguar, Land Rover, and Toyota for most of my career. And since last year, I'm going it alone. I decided that corporate is done for me, and I have set up my own advisory company. So I provide advisory services to the automotive industry and to related industries. And I'm also a car collector and a historic car racer.
Oh, historic car racer. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. So thank you, and thank you again for joining us. Sorry, what's that?
I said not a good one, but I am.
You know what? If you're having fun, who cares? And as long as you don't bang up the cars, because a lot of people that race those things think they can bang up people too. So our next guest on my screen beside him is John Charpentier, I hope, joining us. John is the Director of Marketing and Social Media for the Cadillac V Club, and is that of America or we're the world? And out of Seattle, Washington, and he is a huge Caddy fan and a almost as big Corvette fan. So thanks for joining us, John. Please say hello.
Oh, good morning, and thank you for having me. Yes, I am a big Cadillac V Series fan and a Corvette fan. I've had several Corvettes, and I guess the Z06 was of the Corvettes I've had that was my favorite. And basically the Cadillac V Club is a worldwide club, primarily focused in the United States, but we're interested in sharing our passion to other countries as well, including Canada, of course, and across the water and oceans in Europe. And basically, I've been involved in the Cadillac V Club for just over 3 years. And I opened the first chapter out here in Seattle, Washington, and was promoted a year ago to this new position, Director of Marketing Social Media. Our website, of course, CadillacVClub.com. Our club is not just to help gather enthusiasts to do things together, but we also like to work with dealers and helping them have passionate car owners help them sell more cars. So we're very interested in making more dealers aware, Cadillac dealers aware of our club and getting them involved in the club. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking about collector cars here today.
Thank you very much. I have to say, everybody thought Cadillacs were the cars of your grandfather and that sort of thing until Caddy started blowing everybody's doors away at Le Mans and Rolex and all that other stuff. And I am jealous because you told us you're going to Rolex 24.
As a matter of fact, I should probably add one thing. I'm not as professional as Stavros is, but I do track my cars. The Cadillac V Club, we do autocross, drag strip, road course, and spirited drives. And so we have a lot of fun doing that, but we're not by any means professionals, but we certainly enjoy tracking our cars.
Hey, when you're driving 600 horsepower Blackwings, there's performance for you. And finally, joining us from the seat of his, I don't know if it's an ML or whatever, but is Marco Mantenuto from Toronto, Ontario, who is a Mercedes-Benz guy and a classic car nut, including, I think didn't you just get a Bug-Eye Sprite or something?
I had a Bug-Eye Sprite. Right now I'm talking to you from my brand new Bronco.
Cool.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
We have a snowstorm. I just passed 2 jackknife tractor trailers on the highway as I'm speaking to you. And this thing is like business as usual. We're on 4-wheel drive and it's just like, just another day in the office.
Yeah, so, I know a guy in the States, you can pick up 10 grand right now. Want to sell it?
No. It's standard transmission. It's a 2-door. It's everything I've ever wanted in a Bronco. So I think I'm going to hang on to this one for a little while.
Perfect. Well, at first because I couldn't see on the big screen, but I thought, is that a Wrangler? But that's Bronco's certainly taken it a next step. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We did have some other guests lined up, but they're having some technical difficulties. But that's okay, because that gives you people more time to share your information with us. Ian, take it away.
Yeah, so obviously it's been a lot of crazy stuff going on in the used car marketplace around the world. I'm sure that's also true in Europe as it is here in North America. And when you look at collector cars as a sub area, I mean, I don't know if everyone saw the trailer post, I think it was yesterday I did, that a Carrera GT just, Bring Your Trailer just achieved the highest number ever in the history of that model. I think it was 1.9 million US. What do you think from a collector and a performance car? What's the biggest thing or things that you look for as you know, a lover of these cars, an owner of these cars, or an investor of these cars? Let's start with Stavros. Or it's not Stavros. Stavros? Yeah, Stavros.
Stavros.
Yeah, it's me, unless you want to talk to somebody else.
Sorry. Lots of technology going on here. Go ahead.
So I'll talk more about the European scene, obviously, because that's the one I'm familiar with. And then I'll talk a little bit more selfishly, since I'll talk about my criteria when selecting cars. Obviously, the first criteria for me is if this car has any historic significance, in the sense that when it came out at that time, was it something important for the auto industry, design-wise or engineering-wise? What makes it special? So obviously, yes, a lot of people think that cars that would simply age would become classics, but that's not the truth. So I think either engineering heritage or design heritage are something that are super important for the appreciation of these vehicles.
Appreciate that. Let's go with the youngest guy on the show, Marco.
Hi. I believe there's different criteria. It depends what you're going to be doing with the car. So there's some collectors that do it as an investment. So actually, I have a very good friend of mine who in 2012, I believe it was, dumped all his stock and shares that he had in companies on the market and started buying classic cars. And he did it as a form of an investment. And he says, I wanted to invest in something that I could enjoy as well. And fast forward to today, and one of his cars is worth about $6.5 million US. He owns a 300 SL, original, like, absolutely incredible car. And then there is the people that buy them, and they just want to look at them. So a good example is the collection down in the Saudi, where this guy has one of everything, and they just sit there and he just stares at them. So it depends what your prerogative is. So if you're doing it more as an investment, then you're going to look at what Stratos said, which is, you know, like the heritage of the vehicle and everything else. But if you're doing it as you know, just to have the vehicles and say that you own the specific car, then, you know, you find the thing with the biggest sticker price and you buy it and you stuff it away in a garage, and every night what I would do is crack a bottle of wine and sip a glass of wine while staring at them, right? So,
well, there's a story of someone in Dubai that has a rare Ferrari up in their 75th floor apartment. So,
oh yeah,
who knows if it's true?
You never know. I mean, there's another collector. I think he's an American collector. He has a museum. I think it's in Los Angeles, that you can go occasionally when they deem it worthy to go visit. But he's unique because he actually drives these cars. And people think he's nuts. And he says, well, if you're not enjoying them, what's the point? Go ahead, John.
Well, I've agreed with our previous Stavros and Marco. I would basically say, for us at least, that the two issues our members look into is basically limited production models, and specifically ones with 6-speed manuals. That seems to be what's their key criteria for what they're looking for.
Well, it's interesting. There's a post I see on LinkedIn occasionally, and it says Millennial Anti-Theft Device, and has a picture of the 6-speed manual, which is actually on my shirt today, on the back on a Jeep. And it says, equipped with Millennial Anti-Theft Device, which I thought was hilarious. But go ahead, Jeff.
So folks, tell me, what is the biggest opportunity to make money in collector cars today? And obviously, we know that if you pick up a Ferrari 250 from somebody's, estate somewhere that's not being handled by a pro, you can make a lot of money on it. But what's the biggest realistic opportunity? And actually, I'll hit you back there, John, and give me your opinion. And I know you're mostly focused on Caddies and Corvettes, but I know you know more.
Yeah, well, again, I would go with, and that's what seems to be real hot right now, a 2011 to a 2014 Cadillac CTS-V sport wagon with a 6-speed manual is probably right now, for Cadillac, one of our hottest. That's really, when you can buy one with low mileage and it's on Bring a Trailer going for 50% more than its original MSRP, that's pretty good for a Caddy. And then the second one I would probably go would be the same year, 2011, 2014, but the Cadillac CTS-V Coupe, also with a 6-speed manual. And so those two are definitely in the V series world. Those are two that are doing very well.
And I have to say what I hear, and I don't know, and Stavros, you could probably speak to this too, is there's a lot of money to be made on taking stuff like that from North America over to Europe, because somebody looks at that and says, hey, I got a car nobody's got. So where do you think the biggest opportunity to make money in collector and sports cars is now, Stavros?
Well, in Europe, obviously I see a trend that I think it is going to be kind of global, always following every crisis. And now we are going through this so-called pandemic. People want to really enjoy life and they want to do the things they never did. So I think that's going to be a great break for the market, and people are going to go out there. People that never owned classic cars, they're going to go and buy them because they want to enjoy. They want to enjoy them, and guys who already have cars, they're going to upgrade them. Now, if you ask me about where you're going to make most of the money, the territory I'm moving in is not the super high-end car territory, and the reason is that market is much tighter, and then you also tie up a lot of money in only a couple of cars. Actually, the trend, especially here in Europe, is that a lot of the people my age and a little bit older, so in their 60s, they had, when they were young, for the first time, a family car. So a lot of them have memories, and they want to go back in the market and get that family car that their father had. Now, those cars are relatively cheap to buy. If they're in the 80s, from the 60s and 70s, cars are quite expensive now. But you can you can flip them quickly and make a quick profit with just a little bit of work on them. So I am not saying that the top end market is not good, but I am saying that it's a much more riskier market than the, let's say, more normal cars.
So what you're telling us is there's a market for old Wartburgs?
No. Again, I mean, the car, actually there is, believe it or not, because there are some people who are nostalgic in West Germany. But there is a lot of, there is a big market for Fords of the 70s, specific models. BMWs, Alfa Romeos are quite expensive nowadays. So there is a lot of people out there looking to enter the classic car market, spending, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. And that's the big market. And if you take a slice of that, you can do really strong business, because the margin also on those cars is going to be much higher relatively to the top end cars.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned Alfa Romeo, because I've seen a few people around Vancouver driving around with, I don't know if they're 80s or no, they're not 80s, but 90s Alfa Romeo coupes, and not the fancy ones, just those regular two-door Alphas you see everywhere in Europe. But here it's like, oh, that's cool. They're just cars, from what I understand. Marco, what's your opinion? Where's the best opportunity to make some money here?
So I like Stravo's idea. I'm gonna keep messing up your name. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But everybody does for the past 40 years, so no worries.
I might use it. I might practice after we get off the show, just so for next time. But I look at unfortunately, the auctions like Bring a Trailer or Collecting Cars, all these big auctions kind of messed it up a little bit, because before you could go to Europe and buy a car for cheaper and import it to Canada or the US and make a little bit of money. But now it's a global market. So a high-end vehicle, so a high-end Porsche, a high-end Ferrari is the same price everywhere you go, essentially, right? So it's there's no shortcuts. The best thing to do right now is you look at the list of cool cars that came out 24 years ago, 23 years ago, 22 years ago. You buy them, you stuff them in the garage, and you wait for them to be legal to be imported into the States. Sort of like what they did with the Skylines back a few years ago. Some guy went out and bought in Vancouver, actually bought over 100 Skylines when they were $20,000 to $30,000 each. And then when they hit the 25-year mark in the US, he started selling them for over $100,000 each.
Wow.
So if you have a keen eye for things like that, so you got to spot the occasion before it becomes hot. So by the time it hits the news, it's too late. But essentially, the money on collecting cars, money on classic cars, money on cars in general is made when you buy them, not when you sell them, right? So the cheaper you buy them for, the higher you can sell, the higher profit you're going to make when you go and sell them. That's the idea. And in regards to what Bring a Trailer and these guys have, like, yeah, there is a lot of record prices. Like the Carrera GT hit a record. But when I saw 1.9 million, I thought that's not really a record, because there's a lot of off-the-book transactions that happen where a brand new Carrera GT that I know of that was in Toronto with delivery mileage was pulled out of a dealership in Texas, sold for $2.1 million US. The other thing that you don't hear is that a lot of collectors don't want to sell cars for money. They want to, if they are getting rid of a car, they want something in return, something that's either just as cool or cooler in return for that car. Because at a certain level, money doesn't really matter, especially when you have something that's irreplaceable, right? But the Alfa Romeos, for example, the GT, the 70, 71 GT, the 1750s and the 2000 cc, those have already hit a crazy numbers. There is one that sold for 125,000 US a few months ago, and I know the owner of that car too, funny enough. The Delta Integrales, those were great cars to make some money on, and I know Stravos knows those cars really well. But again, that train has come and has left, unfortunately, and I love those cars, so I'm sad.
Well, you know, the market's going crazy when Alfetta GTs are pulling big money.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, the top dollar for a GT 1600 Alfa Romeo Junior is $375,000 a couple of years ago, and yes, those cars have skyrocketed. I bought mine in a pretty poor state about 6 years ago, and it has doubled in value in the last 5 years. So, but 60s and 70s cars now are becoming quite expensive. So I don't think there is an easy opportunity there.
Well, no, it's there's such a market, especially you know, if you watch these auctions, Marco, you mentioned Bring a Trailer, and of course, Ian's going to mention an elephant in the room in a minute, but you know, the elephant in the auction world is Barrett-Jackson, which is going on pretty close to now or just finished, and people just pay ridiculous amounts of money. But you're right, a lot of these collections, they'll put a bunch of cars on just so they can buy more, just because they want to look at something different. Ian.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have younger generations. I don't know what that means to you, but what cars do you expect to become new classics or over-the-top cars for that, say, younger generation, be that millennial, Gen Z, or aging Gen Xers? Why don't we start with John on that?
Well, I've already mentioned the two that I think in terms of in our generation, the Cadillac V Series started in 2004. So for a young person who likes cars, they'll probably look at the CTS-V from 2004, 2007, only available with a manual 6-speed. So that's something that, you know, I think will catch a young person's buyer who's interested in getting something that's a muscle car that's kind of rarer. You know, we feel that these new Blackwings, these new Cadillac CTS-V Blackwings that were released this last year as a 2022 model, I mean, people don't realize, I mean, they come standard with a Tremec 6-speed manual. What? A Cadillac with a 6-speed manual? That's what both models come standard. The CT4V Blackwing, which has 472 horsepower, which I have one in my garage, and the CT5V Blackwing, which has 668 horsepower. Again, both models come with the 6-speed manual, but are also available with the optional 10-speed automatic. So I think that those are going to be built for the next 3-4 years. So those those are cars that are, as a matter of fact, right now, if you try and buy one, people are selling them for over 20,000 over MSRP, easy. So,
So what you're saying is this will be something for the new generation millennial people, but I guess you're going to have to go get driving lessons on a manual transmission first, huh?
Exactly, that's the challenge. So,
because young drivers or the driving training centers don't even train it anymore. I mean, at least in Canada, young drivers in Canada abandoned it years ago. They don't train manual transmission at all anymore. So you'd have to go to an expert to learn that. Marco, what do you think? You're a millennial generation individual. What do you think collector cars for the younger generation?
Well, I learned I learned how to drive stick at an early age, and I like to joke around and say I never learned how to drive automatic. But my first car was a Honda Prelude that I drove standard in, and it was a 1981. But aside from that, I mean, I own two of those cars. I love them. One day when I have a bigger garage, I'll probably buy another one. But essentially, if you want me to answer that question, I would have to go to my parents' house and walk into my old room and dust off my calendars from when I was a kid. Because whatever was on those calendars, one day I'm going to own every single month of that, right? So like my favorite cars growing up were the Testarossa. Specifically the Miami Vice white with the flying mirror, which there's one at my car club right now. I'm on my way to. The JDM stuff is up and coming. Like you can already see Type R Civics going for $42,000 to $50,000. Anything that was iconic back in the 90s and early 2000s is going to make its way up. We can already, the unfortunate thing is that the expensive, the nice stuff has already gone through the roof. So for example, the Ford GTs, when they did the supercharged rerun in the early 2000s, those are already, almost, some of them are selling for $1 million or almost $1 million, right? So that ship has sailed. But if I had to put my money on it, 350Zs, Nismo 370s, Type Rs, S2000, which I own one of, anything iconic, fast, where Supras are already going through the roof. All the JDM stuff is going to go through the roof, and already has a lot of, and then higher end stuff that hasn't appreciated yet. So the Testarossa, to give an example, a few years ago, the Miami Vice white Testarossa with the flying mirror sold at Barrett Jackson for $157,000 US. To me, that seems like a joke now. To me, that seems like a $300,000-$400,000 car if it were to hit the auction again, right? So it's cars like that are gonna, as my generation grows older and makes money either through crypto or whatever jumbo we come up with, they're gonna start buying up those cars. So interesting.
Stavros?
Well, it's very.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with Marco. JDM stuff has been underappreciated for a long time. Actually, even if we look, I own a couple of the iconic 70s Japanese sports cars like the 240Z and Toyota Celica from the early 70s. And a few years ago, you would pick those cars up for nothing. Now, especially Celicas here in Europe are very, very hard to find and are quite expensive. And the 240s, we see what's going on out there. So I think JDM stuff, yes. I think some of the cars that maybe Marco skipped is Mitsubishi Evo 6. That's going to be a car that's going to reach, I think, a lot of money. Toyota Celica GT4 last gen, all gens actually. A car that's kind of was the nemesis of the Lancia Integrale on the world rally scene, and still you can pick up for pretty much little money, but I think in the next 10 years it will go through the roof because it's a fantastic vehicle. And some of the European cars, I mean, for those who are familiar with European cars, some of the a couple of the Coupe Alfa Romeos of the late 80s, early 90s might get there. There is a couple of Fiats, like the 2000 Coupe Fiat, which is a 5-cylinder, is a special car. I think some of the naturally aspirated early AMGs are going to go up there. Obviously, a couple of the M cars. I mean, we have seen what's going on with the M3s of the E30s. They have absolutely gone nuts. And we see the same trend with A46. I think the 92 E3 with a V8, which was the only ever M3 with a V8, it's going to appreciate greatly in the years to come. But I would say that more of the opportunities would be in the JDM world.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I had one of our guests, Gail, was talking about S2000s. I actually owned one that was a 2002. The one to really look at is obviously you have two engines, but in the last year of production, they made one which I think was called the CSR. It was available in blue and I think another color. It didn't have some features, but it was more of a performance geared car. I know it was sold in Japan and Europe, but it was never sold in Canada, but it was available in the US. So that's definitely a collector car for that S2000 nut. The real crazy S2000 nuts probably prefer the original design because of the different engine design. And I own one. It's a great vehicle. So very low maintenance, and they've appreciated in value for sure. I know the dealer near me, he's got an old NSX and an old S2000 that he doesn't drive, but they're clearly collector pieces that he's not selling. But they'll probably go up in value. As Wysocks I was at over the weekend, he's got a bunch of air-cooled Porsches which seem to just do nothing but go up in value that he's not retailing right now. But anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, it's very interesting because the S2000 wasn't a huge seller new. There were people that really liked it. And now that they don't make them, all of a sudden they're going crazy. And I see people with them with 220,000 kilometers on them selling them for huge money just to have that car. So it's a certainly interesting. And one thing that's, we all talk about the high-end collector cars. And the fact is something that keeps people, most people think they cannot get into it because it's just too much money. And, you know, we talk about that Testarossa. Great. There are a lot of people that have $180,000 sitting around that they can buy something and make a lot of money on it. But for your average person out there, you know, it isn't the case. So for each of you, you know, name a car out there, older than newer, just an affordable car that if you put 10 grand into it, you could turn it, I put the note down here, this in my note, turn it into a beast from a bunny. And what I mean by a beast is just something really, really nice that's got some value to it. And I'll go with Stavros first.
You know, that's a tough one because nowadays the labor costs and have gone through the roof. Quite frankly, I don't think there are many cars that just with $10,000 you can really make them extraordinary. Maybe some of the JDM cars, maybe an S2000. You know, if you put 10,000 in it, maybe you can make it something. I wouldn't say special, but something really, you know, good, something that you could make some money on. But I think that 10,000 is not enough, not in my world at least.
No, I understand that. I actually saw a post somewhere that there's somebody in mostly England that's taking older escorts, and we're talking those 70s escorts, and turning them into something special. We all know the rally escorts are just worth an absolute fortune, but they're literally taking just normal cars and making them nice. I actually think I saw that on the Grand Tour with the 3X Top Gear guys, and they took some of those there.
Yeah, that's the MST. That's Motorsports Tools, and they make an MK1 and an MK2, and the base price is 80,000 pounds sterling. So you're talking about $100,000 for a base escort. I own one of the original MK2 rally cars, and you could pick a chassis up, a two-door chassis up a few years ago for maybe $5,000. Now you will pick up a piece of rot for 25,000 or 30,000, and you need to pump into it another 20, 30, and then probably you can sell it at a profit. So that's the Ford Escort world today.
Well, actually, Brendan mentioned here that modified escorts in Ireland are going over for 100,000 pounds.
Yep.
So, you know, that's approaching nearly 200,000 Canadian. But do you suppose there's an opportunity for some of the more random brands that had rally cars to make some money on them? And maybe in Europe they're not so random, but when you watch some of these old Peugeots, etc., maybe is there an opportunity there?
In Europe, for sure, there is. I mean, the classic car scene is quite developed, and it's developing even more. It's a cheap way of entering motorsports, and let's not kid ourselves. People like me who are in their 50s now, they have the financial ability to do something that they wanted as a kid, and this type of motorsport, it's relatively low cost, so anybody can enter. So these cars now become something extremely attractive to them. So a lot of these European cars, they have decent values. Obviously, they're not so common in North America, but for sure there is a lot of connoisseurs in North America that know their stuff. Like obviously Marco was talking about the Integrales. That I think if they picked those cars up and brought them to the States or to Canada, I'm sure they could make big bucks on those cars.
Yeah, I'm sure they could.
Mitsubishi, maybe Mitsubishi cars that aren't as popular here.
Obviously, I mean, Evos all over the world are big. So we're talking mid 90s to mid 2000s. You can still pick them up. They're not dirt cheap, but they're reasonable. And these vehicles are iconic. I mean, obviously, Marco is a much younger guy than me, but all the guys that played the video games, there is not a single video game that you don't have a Subaru or a Mitsubishi in there. So those are iconic cars and very solid, relatively easy to maintain. And I think, there are good opportunities out there.
Well, I think the Subarus have actually, they've caught that wave, whereas the Mitsubishis they're getting close. But it's very interesting. Now, the question I have for you is, what's the market like for mid-2000 Corvettes on your neck of the woods?
In Europe?
Yeah.
So there is a clientele for American vehicles. One of the issues we have here is how to import them because of the emission standards, and there is a certain path you have to follow. So there are certain countries like Sweden or the Netherlands that will certify these vehicles for circulation in Europe. So I cannot import directly, let's say, into Greece or Italy, a Corvette from the 60s or 70s, but I'll have to take it through Sweden or Holland and go through a certain expense. So that makes the cars, a bit pricey when they come in. However, there is a very strong, Corvettes have globally a very strong following. Camaros, not so much. Mustangs, yes. Mustangs are very, very strong. Late 60s, 67, 69s, very, very strong. So I would say that these are the two sports cars in Europe that have a very strong market.
Perfect. And speaking of Corvettes, John, is there an opportunity in the Cadillac Corvette world to upgrade something and maybe an older high mileage or something for 10 grand and actually make something nice there?
Well, we have a few members who have purchased, some young V Club members who've purchased as I mentioned, the 2004, 2007 Cadillac V Series CTSV and have done that, and have put in a more powerful Cadillac engine, V8 engine in it. So that's definitely an area there. But I was thinking of some old GM vehicles that that I when I was young was passionate about. I guess I'd have to go with the Pontiac Trans Am, the Smoking the Bandit, and even older Trans Ams. I think I've always liked the Pontiac Trans Am, Buick GNX. I look of GM's Cyclone, Typhoon, SUV pickup. Those were hot items at car shows here in the Pacific Northwest. Guys who have those are certain. Seem to be, because they're rarer, they're limited production, those are some of the things that I think are going to be going up in value, and there's some people who have some money who could get one of those and be happy with it, as a car that's going to fun to drive, and it goes up increased value.
Perfect. It's funny, we had on one of the cable channels here, there's this guy that has a restoration shop out in the central part of British Columbia, up in the mountains, and the show was called Rust Valley Explorers. And he had about 6 acres of land, which was full of old cars. And the show's about, if he wants to make some money, he walks through the yard, finds something odd, and it doesn't matter what it is, pulls it into his shop. It's his son and his buddy. They work on it. They put an engine in it. They get it running. They do the body work. They paint it up good, and then they sell it. And it's some of the most nondescript stuff, which of course you may not see in Europe there, Stavros, but older Chevy Novas, or just regular run-of-the-mill sedans. Doesn't have to be a Shelby Mustang or an Alpha, one of the Alpha Spiders or something like that. And that's very interesting. Mind you, he just sold off most of his old junk cars in his lot. He had a big auction, maybe to make some money. I don't know. Ian.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a show. I think it's near Salmon Arm, actually. The guy actually works in explosives as well, to clear roads and stuff to make money. But pretty interesting. I have a buddy who lives in Salmon Arm, so he knows him. We didn't ask Marco that question, though.
Marco, I apologize.
So if you had $10,000,
I'm offended. I'm just kidding. So it's funny because we're talking about this and we're talking about rally cars. And 3 years ago, to almost the day, I was in Monte Carlo because my wife is a navigator for rallies, and she was running WRC, and I got to walk through the Prince of Monaco's collection, where he has a bunch of F1 cars and a bunch of old rally cars, and it's just it's bringing back a lot of good memories. But I dumped $10,000 in my S2000, and I did it because I wanted a fun drive, not to keep it original. So I put a supercharger on it, all-in suspension system, and I turned it into a track monster with 410 horsepower. But that was just me being silly because I wanted something fast and cheap on gas. But if like Stravo said, it's hard to find something that you can make money on. So my suggestion is this: if you're gonna buy the car and spend $20,000 to $30,000 and then dump an extra $10,000 in, call Factory 5, order yourself a Cobra kit car, get it delivered to your house for $14,000 US. If you're pretty handy and you were gonna do the work yourself on the car for $10K anyways, then get that $10,000, drop an engine in it, build a car, and then you once you're said and done, you're gonna have $40,000, $50,000 invested in the car, and then you have yourself $85,000 to $100,000 car at the current market prices. So,
good idea.
Even better,
very good point.
Daytona GT, the coupe. You cannot find one for less than $100K. Porsche 356. If you can get your hands on a Caterham kit for a Lotus 7. You're laughing. There is a wait list for those. Any kit car at this point is probably the only way to really make some real money on cars. But again, you're putting the labor in yourself. If you got to pay somebody else to do the labor, then there goes your profits, right?
Oh,
there's even a market that I've seen for some of the older, rattier kit cars that people are picking them up.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, what was it, a 1988 Lotus at the local Lotus dealer with skis from the 80s. I think it was in one of those Bond films, or at least that type of car. It was kind of interesting. What's your favorite performance collector car story? Let's start with Stavros.
Probably one of my stories. When I find something, I just can't sleep until I buy it. And that's some of the advice I'll give to other people and say, don't do what I do. Because the first couple of cars I bought, I think I paid a lot more than I should, just because I could not sleep at night. And of course, the seller could realize that. But I think one of the stories is how I bought my 240Z. At the time, I was the CEO of BMW and Rolls-Royce in Saudi Arabia, where I've seen some of the most extreme collections, including the collection of the King of Saudi Arabia, which is, I have even pictures of, but I could never show to anybody. As well as one of the best private museums I've seen is the museum of a gentleman that he is also the importer of Ferrari, Range Rover, and BMW in one of these countries. He has a private collection for more than 150 cars including cars of former kings and emperors and every single Ferrari ever produced, every model.
Wow.
So those are some amazing collections, but some down to earth stuff. So I one of the guys that used to work for me in Rolls Royce, he said to me one day, he said, "Boss, I saw there is a guy selling a 240Z, and I think you fancy these old cars from the 70s." So I called the guy. It was a Spanish guy that was on assignment in Saudi, and I called him. I was ready to fly to Greece for Easter. It was 10 o'clock at night. 2 o'clock was my flight in the morning. I said to him, he said to me, "I'll send you some pictures." He sent me some picture of the car. The car was kind of rough. And I said to him, "Okay," I said, "when I come back from Greece, I'll come and take a look at it." But I couldn't resist. So an hour later, I called him. I said, "Are you at home? Can I come and see it?" So I went over. I saw the car. The car had a lot of potential. He said to me, price was whatever, let's say $10,000. I said, "Nah, I'm not going to offer you that." I said, "I'm not selling the vehicle." I said, "Fine, I'm going to Greece and I'll come back in a week and we can talk again." And while in Greece, I couldn't sleep at night because I knew that if I miss this opportunity, I'll never get a 240 in Europe. They're very hard to come by. Just to give you an idea, officially only 740 units were imported in the 60s and 70s, and all of them have rotted to dust. So they're hard to get here. And I thought it's an opportunity. I called the guy. We kind of made a deal over the phone. I got back to Saudi. I went to see the car. I discovered that the car has the wrong engine. I told the guy, I don't want to have it. We negotiated. I got the car. I rebuilt the car and I brought it back home. Now, the interesting thing is that this vehicle was sold originally in California. At some point, it was moved in Texas. From Texas, it was imported in Saudi by a guy that was part of the religious police, which is kind of funny. Then they told him that that car is unethical. He should not drive it. And so he had to sell the car. So he sold the car to the Spanish guy, but without transferring the documents. So I went through some hoops, and in the end, I got the car. I restored the car. I did kind of a resto mode on it. And today, it's the most beautiful car in my collection. And that's, one of the many stories that every car collector, I think, has. But I think the value of the car is its story too.
What color is it?
It's a dark green. It's not a British racing green. Because I'm in the car business, so I probably had the guys do about 50 or 60 samples for me before I got to the color I wanted. So that's why I said it's kind of resto mode. It's a unique color that I kind of came up with the recipe with the help, of course, of the specialists.
Wow.
Very nice.
Marco, story?
Personal stories?
Yes.
Or like of cars that I purchased or
or a favorite story? Leave it up to you.
lots of stories. I mean, the best one I have is when I bought my 66 Mustang Coupe last summer. I called the guy on Kijiji and the ad had been
Oh, we lost him.
That snowstorm.
We lost him. I guess
Yeah,
we're going to
before-
turn over. Is he back? No, I think we
there-
lost him.
he's
John,
like-
go ahead, John.
My favorite story has to be my 2002 Electron Blue Corvette Z06.
Wow.
I ordered a brand new car. I wanted a museum delivery at the Bowling Green Museum in National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And again, not knowing what was going to be happening, I flew out there with my dad to fly into Nashville, and then my good friend who worked at the GM plant, the Corvette plant, picked us up in Nashville, drove us to Bowling Green. This was on September 10th, 2001. I don't know if that date rings a
Wow.
bell to
Yep.
anybody. That's the date I picked up my brand new 6-speed Electron Blue Corvette Z06. And the next day, you know what happened on September 11th. So I'll never forget that trip, obviously. And that was my first, not my first Corvette, but my first Z06. And so that's, and I have to say to this day, unfortunately, my dad passed away a couple years ago. I was on my way to the Rolex 24, as a matter of fact. He passed away with dementia, Alzheimer's. up in British Columbia at the Peace Arch Hospital is where he was staying in White Rock. But I wish I had kept that Z06 because that has very sentimental value to me. That I wish I hadn't sold that. But that's my story. I'll never forget that car. My dad coming with me to go get it at the museum. And I don't know if you know this, but when you're a museum, I was a member of the National Corvette Museum, and I still am today. You can when you buy your car, they have cameras of all these car deliveries. So my friends across up in Montreal, back in Montreal, all over BC, my relatives all over Canada, were able to see me and my dad pick up the car, and it was quite a special. That day was September 10th was very special. Obviously, the next day wasn't so, but I'll never forget that. So that's my story about my most memorable car for me.
Jeff, you have a memorable story. You bought and sold a lot of cars.
Oh my golly. I have to say, not for me necessarily, but in my other life, in the Jeep world, went to the Jeep Jamboree. And for those of you who don't know what the Jeep Jamboree is, it's basically summer camp for adults where all these Jeep owners go up into the mountains and they go one after the other, following in trails, many of them never having off-roaded in their lives. You've got people with a brand new Limited at that time, which was a pretty fancy SUV, sitting there having lunch with some guy with a 1974 CJ that's held together by tie straps and everything else. But at one of the dinners, a guy was talking about him and Jeeping, and he says, he's telling the story about how him and his dad had gone out, and like you said there, John, it reminded me how they had gone out and they had been four-wheeling, and they were, how his dad was ripping through all the streams, and he had to guide him up, and and he actually got quite teared up talking about it. So cars carry a very special time. My Corvette, I actually have seen a dealer advertise it, and I went over to Vancouver Island, and I'd found out it was a gentleman in his 80s. He bought it brand new. The car had 9,000 kilometers on it, and he just basically couldn't get into it and out of it, couldn't drive it anymore, and couldn't stand the car just sitting there with somebody looking at it. So that's about as close as mine comes to the stories.
Marco is back. You want to continue, Marco?
Surprisingly, my phone decided to overheat, and all I had to do was roll down the window and put it out for a minute. 40 centimeters of snow and counting will help cool it down quick. I was saying I looked at this ad, came up, and it was 21 or 24 minutes that it was up, and it said selling for an old relative, new tires, new brakes, new steering rack, new. Call so-and-so phone number. And I called, and I knew the guy was old because he didn't even have call waiting. So I called 52 times in a row until I finally got through to him, and I said, he's on the phone with somebody else. And I finally got through to him, and I said, is the car still available? And he says, actually, I just got off the phone with a fella who told me that he's sending me a check. And I said, oh, okay. Where's this guy from? I said, well, he's from Toronto. I said, you got to be careful because a lot of people are sending certified checks that are fake. I'm like, do you trust this guy? You never met him. He says, well, I trust him. He's a police officer. And I said, okay, what's he going to do with the car? He says, well, he's going to put it into movies. It's going to be featured in movies. So I said, okay, let me get this straight. You have a police officer who finds cars for movies, who's sending you a check in the mail right now. I said, I don't know, it doesn't add up to me. And he's like, he thinks about it, and he's like, and he swears on me on the phone. He's like, holy, you're right. That does not sound right. I said, listen, I know you're in Windsor. I'm in Toronto. I'll be there in 4 hours. I have the cash in hand. I want to buy, and I wasn't even looking for the car. And that's usually when you find them. And he's like, okay, let me make a phone call. Let me talk to my wife, and let me talk to the guy. Calls me back 5 minutes later. He's like, well, the car is yours, but what about the price? And I said, what about the price? The price was excellent. It was well below market value. I was ready to pay full price. He's like, well, the other guys offer me $500 less. And I said, who in the right mind sees a really good deal on a car and decides to negotiate on it. Like, I said, I'm paying you asking, and I'm sending a truck to pick it up. You don't have to do anything. And he's like, done, yours. I got in my car, left to work early that day, got in my car, drove 4.5 hours to Windsor. I get in the garage, and this guy had probably 15 trophies on the wall for the car. He was a body man, one owner vehicle, body guy, restored the vehicle 5-6 years ago. It was in impeccable condition. It started at a half a turn of the key. And I said, yeah, done. I got home at 3 a.m. that day. The transport truck went 3 days later and picked up the car, and she's my baby.
Rock and roll.
So,
Great story.
Wow. Well, we're out of time. Jeff, do you have any final comments? Or anyone else have a story they want to share?
Well, I just, while everybody's thinking, I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's really quite enjoyable to talk about, about cars themselves. And we spend so much time talking about processes and procedures and what's not good, etc. It's great to have a show where we're talking about what's good about life, and for all of us, it's cars. And that's great stuff. And thank you, Stavros, for joining us from where you are, and from the gentleman that joined us from Ireland, and everybody else. Ian will be sharing out the recording. It'll be on podcasts very soon on YouTube, and of course on the autohubshow.com. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day, or have a great evening for you, Stavros. Drive safe, Marco. And thanks again, John, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
see you guys.
Bye. Bye, guys.